Victor Conte here. I was just curious because I know you support VADA, and everything, and I was in Oxnard with Robert Garcia and his fighter Brandon Rios for the Manny Pacquiao fight. After the fight, it was revealed that he had failed his post-fight drug test. Garcia and Brandon Rios, they have since criticized VADA. They've said how they didn't like the way that the testing was done, like during the lead up to the Pacquiao fight. They said how one of the VADA people, when they were in the gym, it was kind of like they just set the stuff by the table, and how there could have been blood, sweat flying. He said when they were in China, how one of the VADA people told Brandon to pour into just a cup. I'm sure you've heard all this. Pour into a cup, and then they transferred it over. And Robert Garcia said, he just doesn't trust VADA in the wake of Rios's test. I'm just curious if you've heard that and if you have had any thoughts.
I have heard the things that they have said, and I don't think there's much merit to any of it. I really don't. First of all, they've said things like, well, listen, we did this testing for the whole period of time up until the fight, and we tested negative, and then at the fight we tested positive. Well, anyone that understands anti-doping testing, what you do out of competition is a different set of tests than what you do at a competition. They do not test for stimulants out of competition. They do test for stimulants. So that's the reason. It's not that, well, by the way, this test was dirty and this, clean, and this test was dirty, and that doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. Secondly, they talk about the China Commission. The China Commission is not doing WADA code testing. They're not looking at that exhaustive list of stimulants, which I believe currently is 61 different stimulants. So I don't think the China Commission even tested for the DMAA. So VADA is a higher standard than other commission testing, including Nevada or New York or whatever boxing commission in the United States, as well as in China. So there's been a lot of bad things said, about the collection and so on. Let me explain something. Whether you're USADA or you're any other one of the international testing organizations in countries all over the world, they use specimen collection companies. IDTM, International Data and Testing Management, is out of Sweden. That's one of them. There's another one called Claridium. And all of these entities that do testing hire these companies that go out and do the collection. So technically, it's not VADA that collected the sample. It is either IDTM or it's Claridium. So in the United States, it's probably Claridium, and in China, it was probably IDTM. But these people are certified as WADA collectors, the highest training and collection officers in the world. So to blame VADA for hiring a company who does the collection for Olympic caliber athletes, in my mind, that's ignorant. It's exactly what it is.
Gotcha. What to people on the outside, like the difference between VADA, USADA, like what is the difference? Like if you could elaborate.
Well, let me explain the difference to you. And my big criticism of Major League Baseball, the NFL, of Olympic caliber athletes, boxing, I believe one of the biggest loopholes that exists is they use the TE ratio. Boxing commissions, for the most part, uses 6-to-1. WADA and everybody that follows WADA code uses 4-to-1. Normal is 1-to-1, and you do have some variation, genetic variation there. But the reality is that test is very easy to circumvent. When you take fast-acting testosterone, whether it be gels or creams or lifesaver like troches, they call them, oral, it'll clear the system and be back down below the even 4-to-1 WADA allowable ratio within 6 hours. So it clears very quickly. However, this other test called CIR, carbon isotope ratio testing, can detect the use of exogenous testosterone, regardless if it's injection or cream or oral, whatever it is, for up to 2 weeks. So it's a much more effective test. Now, for the most part, Olympic caliber athletes, including Lance Armstrong as an example, they don't even do carbon isotope ratio testing unless they have an elevated TE ratio, and they use that as a confirmatory test so that when they get to the hearing to support the doping charges, they've got this extra, what they call nail in the coffin test,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Okay.
So what the difference between specifically what VADA does and what others do, VADA does EPO testing, which is a urine test. They do growth hormone testing, which is a blood test. They do carbon isotope ratio testing for synthetic testosterone on 100% of the urine samples that they collect. I don't believe there's any other anti-doping association or agency in the world that does that. Not anybody under WADA code. So do they periodically, if they get intelligence that athlete A is using synthetic testosterone of some form, will they come and target test and use that once in a while? Yes, but I guarantee it's less than 5% and maybe on less than 1% of the samples that they collect for Olympic caliber athletes. So what VADA is attempting to do is plug that hole, and in an 8-week time frame before a fight, let's say, and if on average it's random, but they test every couple weeks, right? And they do in an 8-week time frame, they do at least 4 or 5 tests and then test at the fight. Well, that means each time they collect a sample, it would detect the use of synthetic testosterone. So it basically plugs that loophole. Now, other people that have done this, like this so-called enhanced testing by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, they came out later and they said that they had, on 4 of the samples collected, they had done it on 2 of the samples. Well, that's still not as effective or stringent as what VADA does. Secondly, when they talked about Josh Barnett in the UFC, and they also used this enhanced testing, well, it came out later, they didn't even do CIR testing. So let's be straight up here. WADA accredited labs do all the testing for VADA and USADA, and even when they do the enhanced testing through the Nevada State Athletic Commission, it's all done by WADA accredited labs. The samples are collected by WADA accredited collectors. Right? So there's no difference. So to say VADA does this and VADA does that, these are ignorant boxers and trainers that do not understand anti-doping collection or testing.
Thank you.